For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Principality, a state ruled by a prince. The fifth highest order of the ninefold celestial hierarchy. Power, the ability to do something or act in a particular way, especially as a faculty or quality. The capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. Ruler, a person exercising government or dominion. Darkness, the partial or total absence of light. Wickedness or evil.
What's your problem? I said, what's your problem?
How are you today, sir?
Okay, how's it going?
Fine, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Spiritual, relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. Relating to religion or religious belief. Wickedness, the quality of being evil or morally wrong.
We have no idea the reason for the flood. It was because of wickedness, but what kind of wickedness? What was going on that God would destroy his creation? These Nephilim, these angels began to mate with women, and God cursed them for that.
Now tell me about the word Nephilim. What does that mean? In the Hebrew, it comes from the verb nephal. It means the fallen ones, and that's the term used. Don't confuse that with the fallen angels. The fallen angels, according to Genesis 6, cohabited with human women to produce a hybrid offspring that are called in the Hebrew the Nephilim. In the Septuagint version of the Old Testament, the translation of the Old Testament into Greek, they use the word gigantes, which is transliterated giants, right. And they did happen to be giants, but that's not what the word means. The word actually means, in the Greek, the earthborn. And so, from the Greek point of view, they're earthborn. From the Hebrew point of view, they're the fallen ones. But either way, they're pointing to a hybrid, and it apparently was part of Satan's plan to contaminate the Messianic line.
Now, this is first mentioned in Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, where it speaks of the sons of Most High taking to themselves daughters of man. Now, we get a deeper version or a more detailed version of the story and what else happened in the book of Enoch. So in chapter 6, in the first two verses, it talks about how the sons of Most High saw the daughters of man, and they were comely, they were fair, and they lusted after them. And they wanted to make wives of them and have them beget their children. Okay, now, they had a leader. His name was Samhaza. Now, he was in fear of doing this act alone, so he calls the rest of the angels to bind themselves by a mutual imprecation that would pretty much prevent them from abandoning the plan and causing him to face final judgment all alone. Now, this mutual imprecation is the act of casting a curse. So they cast a curse to bind themselves to doing this deed. Now, the offspring from the sons of Most High and the daughters of men was described as giants. It says in chapter 7, verse 3, and they became pregnant and they bore giants whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. It said that once man could no longer sustain these giants, the giants turned against mankind and began to devour mankind. It says they sinned against birds, beasts, reptiles, fish. They began to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. In chapter 8, the Watchers began to teach mankind their ways. It says Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates. In chapter 2, it says that there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and many were led astray. They became corrupt in their ways. Samhaza taught enchantments, cutting of the roots. There was also taught astrology, constellations, knowledge of the clouds, signs of the earth, signs of the sun, courses of the moon. Men perished. They began to cry, and their cry actually reached up to the heavens. It says that Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down at the heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said one to another, the earth made without inhabitant cries, the voice of their crying up to the gates of heaven. Men cried up and asked the angels to plead their cause to Most High. The angels went to Most High and pled the cause to Most High. Most High spoke and commanded Uriel, the son of Lamech, and said to him, go to Noah and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth and will destroy all that is on it. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all generations of the world. Now in chapter 12, it speaks of Enoch. Now Enoch was sent to these fallen angels to give them the judgment which was to be for their deeds from Most High. So Azazel and his associates were to be bound hand and foot and cast into darkness in the valley of the earth and covered with jagged rocks until the day of judgment. As for the children that they bore, well, let's see what happens to their spirits. Chapter 15, verses 7 and 8. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. Evil spirits upon the earth. And on the earth shall be their dwelling. Verse 8, evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. In 9, as for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. Verse 10, and the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men, and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. That was verse 11. Okay, so now we see these Nephilim, we see these rulers of the darkness, these principalities, this spiritual wickedness in high places. But now let's take a look on some of the strategies of war that they're using against Most High's people, his children, his flock. Deception. Look in Genesis, there was deception. With Eve and the apple. The serpent deceived Eve into taking a bite of the apple. You also see deception in Revelations 12 and 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Deception. Deception.
I'll be better without it. Yea, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. You are with me. Thy rod and staff, they comfort me. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life.
So, how are they deceiving the people into dropping their spiritual armor?
The goal is to cause man to fall all the way from grace so that the atmosphere can be created. I told you Satan been working on this for 6,000 years to get the kind of atmosphere that he can reign in. He needs to reign in darkness where people are devoid of God. That's why they're fighting as hard as they can to take God out of everything, and everything that's terrible, they're exalting it.
Who's they?
Was a guy that did a study on sabotage Sebi named Henry McCow, and he does one of the most thorough studies about it. And he has an article called "The Satanic Cult That Rules the World." And this is why you must understand that the world is dominated by families. Families. This is what Paul said, you are fighting spiritual wickedness in high places, principality, princes and palaces. You're fighting people who are decreeing their philosophy on mankind. They're people that are in league with Satan are decreeing because they own your corporation, they own your oil, they own your banks, they own your money, they own your music, they own your cars, they own your land, so they can decree their will based upon the fact they own everything you need to live. They own your food, so they can decree how they want your food to be. They own your water, so they can decree what they put in it. You got to realize that's the principalities you're fighting against. These wicked people that are in league with Satan that can change your life by them decreeing based upon the fact you need their system. Now you see why the Bible says, come out from among them. Begin to operate in a system of the kingdom of God where your system's not connected to theirs.
The matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave. That you are a slave.
Okay, now that brings to mind Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. Okay, now, this seed and this affliction brings to mind Exodus. Exodus is going to shed some light on this seed in captivity. Chapter 1, verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
We're developing a society because of all of these different toxins known to affect brain function. We're seeing a society that not only has a lot more people of lower IQ, but a lot fewer people of higher IQ. In other words, a dumbing down, a chemical dumbing down of society. So everyone's sort of mediocre. That leaves them dependent on government because they can't excel. We have these people of lower IQ who are totally dependent. Then we have this mass of people who are going to believe anything they're told because they can't really think clearly. And very few people of very high IQ who have good cognitive function who can figure this all out. And that's what they want. So, you can kind of piece it together as to why they are so insistent in spending so many hundreds of millions of dollars of propaganda money to dumb down society.
You might want to ask yourself why the entire culture is utterly saturated with mass media entertainment from all sides, while the educational system in America continues its stupefying downward slide since the U.S. government decided to take over and subsidize the public school system.
What your government pays for, it gets. When we understand that, then we look at government-financed institutions of education, and turned out by these government-financed schools, logic will tell you that if what is being turned out in those schools was not in accord with what the state and the federal government wanted, then it would change it. The bottom line is that the government is getting what they have ordered. They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much. That is why our country and our world has become so proliferated with entertainments, mass media, television shows, amusement parks, drugs, alcohol, and every kind of entertainment to keep the human mind entertained, so that you don't get in the way of important people by doing too much thinking. You had better wake up and understand that there are people who are guiding your life and you don't even know it.
Okay, to find out who that is and who this is in control, we're going to go to Exodus chapter 17. It says that the congregation of the children of Israel were journeying from the wilderness of sin, but along their journey, in verse 8,
Amalekites.
Amalek shows up and fights with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses tells Joshua to choose men to go fight with Amalek, and tomorrow they will stand at the top of the hill and the rod of Most High in his hand. Now they did fight, and as Moses held up his hand, they prevailed, and when he dropped, they didn't. Now, the key thing there is in verse 14. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua. For I will utterly
put out the remembrance of Amalek from heaven. Verse 15, and Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. Verse 16 is very important, for he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. War with Amalek from generation to generation. Now let's look and see who Amalek is.
Now Amalekites, or Amalek, is of the Esau bloodline. It shows here that Amalek was Esau's grandson through Eliphaz.
Are modern Jews descendants of the tribe of Judah, one of the sons of Jacob? Are European Jews really Gentiles whose ancestors converted to Judaism? The facts are clear now that most of those who call themselves Jews are not descendants of Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel, and therefore have no claim to the land of Palestine. The October 29, 1996 New York Times, in an article entitled Scholars Debate Origins of Yiddish and the Migrations of Jews, states, the Eastern European Jews were not really Semitic, that they were largely descended from the Turkish Khazars, who converted to Judaism in medieval times. Therefore, modern Jews have no blood link to the biblical Israelites. Jewish historians have established that at least 90% of all Jews come from a Turkish mix of people and are largely sourced from the Khazar kingdom. The Jewish scholar Arthur Koester provided overwhelming evidence in his book titled The 13th Tribe, showing that in the 8th century, Khazaria, which was greatly made up of the Turkish mixed people known as Khazars, converted to their national religion of Judaism, which was based on the Babylonian Talmud.
Judaism, as it is practiced today, had anything to do with the patriarchs and prophets of the Old Testament? Nothing. Nothing at all. You see, I was raised in Judaism, and we were under the authority of the rabbis, whose formulation of God and the world around us was based not on the Bible, but on the Jewish Talmud.
Because in the Jewish Kabbalah and Talmud, you tell people what you're going to do before you do it. If you're going to murder somebody, you tell them beforehand.
America to me.
Modern America first saw light on a Hollywood screen. It was largely the product of 6 movie studios established in the 1920s and run for over 30 years by a group of Jewish immigrants. They had strikingly similar backgrounds.
All of these men who founded Hollywood were born within a 500-mile radius of one another. And all of them wound up roughly within 15 miles of one another in Los Angeles. One could say that the American dream was really born in Eastern Europe.
At the turn of the century, movies reflected the vision of America shared by Thomas Edison and the other men who invented the film industry. Most of these old stock Protestants saw film as an amusement for the working classes. Adolf Zucker believed that to attract the middle class, one had to change not just the theaters, but the films. Edison decided that the Jews had overstepped their bounds. To shut them out in 1908, he organized a producers' trust that declared a monopoly on film production in America. 7 years later, Edison's trust would lose its monopoly in the courts. But in 1912, to escape Edison and the goons he sent to enforce his control of the industry, the future moguls headed west to the orange groves of California. Here they found immediate success. Following Laemmle by 1920, Harry Cohn, Zucker, Goldwyn, Fox, and Mayer had set up their own studios, Golden Shtetls, where each was clearly in charge.
And these guys were ruthless beginning to end. The executive had the primary input into the picture and supervised every aspect of production. over and above the fact that beyond any individual picture, it was the executive who created the entire studio apparatus. Every producer who worked there, every director who worked there, every writer who worked there, and every star who worked there was part of the larger system that was created by the Hollywood Jews. They created their own America, an America which is not the real America. It's their own version of the real America. But ultimately, this shadow America becomes so popular and so widely disseminated that its images and its values come to devour the real America.
Effect itself originated from a kind of persuasive, market-oriented advertising, political campaign type of communication. The measure of effect is before and after, or a group in which you include the message, a group in which you don't, and you try to look at the difference. And you ask a question, well, what has changed? Has my message been effective? So effect is change-oriented. Now the question is, it's easy to see how you measure change, but how do you measure no change? How do you measure stability? This leads us to the notion of cultivation as compared to and contrasted with effects. Cultivation basically is the building and the maintenance of stable sets of images about life and society that are driven by the everyday flow of communication. In practical terms, this means compare heavy viewers of television, people whose cultural life is essentially monopolized by television, who don't read much of the newspaper or don't read much of anything, with people who are light viewers, not because they don't like television, but because they have a much greater variety of cultural participation patterns. They read newspapers, they read magazines, they read books, they go to concerts. And when we do that, indeed we find significant differences. We find that the heavy viewers see things differently from the light viewers. The heavy viewers and people whose cultural life is essentially monopolized by television absorb the television image of life and society from infancy on. They act in a world which is created mostly by the storytelling capacity of television.
The rise of the skinny jeans started in the music industry and was made popular by the hipster culture. But now men and women of all backgrounds, maybe even John Hook, wears them. And doctors say men need to be wary of super tight denim because there are health risks associated with them.
Take them tight jeans off, put some baggy jeans on, because you're going to need them.
Girls don't even wear their pants that tight. Pull them up. I bet your sister can't even fit them pants. Big as you is, you about to be 16. Looking like you got a 10-year-old pair of pants on. Get your behind up there and change them pants. You can't even walk fast.
In the 1920s and 30s, movie houses became temples of the new Hollywood religion. Jewish values made kitsch. 75% of all Americans went to the movies at least once a week. Actors became the gods and goddesses of the new American religion.
Getting cheerfully mobbed. Here she comes, the star.
And where there are new gods, there must be new idols. So the studio heads began a movie guild with a lofty title of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. It was Mayer's brilliant idea to create the Oscars, where the movie moguls could honor themselves by giving each other awards. In this way, they went from being a group of immigrant Jews to award-winning American producers. The Jewish fear of standing out was expressed through another icon that would make its way to the screen.
Superman was invented by two Jewish kids in the late 1930s, when there also was a worldwide upsurge in very frightening anti-Semitism. Superman is discovered like Moses in the bulrushes. He's an immigrant from another planet who comes to Earth. He has his identity as a mild-mannered intellectual, but really underneath he's the man of steel. I think that's a very suggestive Jewish fantasy. It's almost as if he's passing all the time.
While the Jew felt like an alien in America, Superman was a real alien.
This looks like a job for Superman.
Yet incredibly, he is the only superhero who manages to keep his identity secret without wearing a mask. Only Jews could have created a story based on the premise that all one needs is a Gentile demeanor to hide in plain sight.
Odd topic. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, baby.